Well, I shot the movie. If you've been following my channel for any time, you know that I directed and shot a new feature film using a RED Komodo. And I've made several videos about the actual camera build, etc. So if you want to learn more about what I used and how I did the build, then check out those videos. And I also did a sort of wrap-up BTS video on my other YouTube channel, my iPhone YouTube channel, talking about just making the movie and lessons I learned or were reminded about in making a low budget film. Now, I shot on a Komodo, but I did use an iPhone in a few scenarios as insert shots, and I used Filmic Pro. And Filmic Pro has been great. If you don't know about Filmic Pro, or again, my other channel, links for that are in the description. But today, what I want to talk about, the pluses and minuses of using the RED Komodo, mainly all pluses, but I did learn quite a bit in making this movie. It's my first film to shoot on a Komodo. And overall, the experience was really good, but there were some, I would call them not hiccups necessarily, but just learning curves or mistakes I made that I want to share with you that hopefully, if you're using a RED Komodo or now the RED Komodo X, you will not do or not experience. So let's go with the good first. And again, it's mostly all good. The number one thing is this camera is a workhorse. We shot for a little over 2 weeks total. It never hiccuped. The camera itself never had a mistake, never broke down. Anything that happened was operator error. And I'll get to that in a minute. There was never a corrupt file. There was never a dropout. The fan noise was non-existent. The sound mixer on the movie kept asking me if the fan was going on the camera at all. And it was, but it never made a noise. It is very quiet, surprisingly quiet. Our last day of the shoot, we actually hit some really high temperatures. The heat index was 109 degrees. We shot in Dallas. Now, it was June, early June. Wasn't supposed to be that hot, but we had some record heat come through. We also had a lot of storms, and so a lot of rain and a lot of heat. The camera, again, never had a problem. And the only thing I, of course, had to do was calibrate it. And so if you're a RED owner, you know about doing the calibration, especially when you change any type of location that the temperature changes, like going from inside to outside. The camera will warn you when you need to do it. Although it's a good practice to do it every day as you start up the camera. Along those same lines is, when you're shooting a movie, you're rolling the camera like nonstop all day long. And that's true. We had a 30-minute lunch break each day, 10 to 12 hours a day. Now, not constant 10 to 12 hours a day, but a lot of time that camera's on, whether you're lighting a scene and you've got the monitor up and you're looking at it, or you're rolling. And I mean, that thing was just amazingly consistent and worked great. One obvious aspect is that the camera in the scheme of things is small, even though once you rig it out with a follow focus and a matte box and, cine lenses, etc., it does get big in quotes, especially as compared to shooting on a mirrorless camera or a phone. Yeah, much bigger than those situations, but very, very manageable. Initially, I was a one-man camera department, but we did fortunately get a camera intern to come work. He ended up acting as a second AC, but even then, it was a very small team, and so the size of the camera made it easy to work with. Very easy to work with. And so I actually would credit that to being able to make a movie in 2 weeks. The ease of use and the ability to pick up the camera and move it around. And so I really like the Komodo in that respect. And then ultimately, the look of the footage, it just looks like a movie. It just does. And that's the cool thing about using a RED or, again, Alexa or Sony Venice. They have a certain look that just looks like and feels like a movie. And that's what I like about using, again, cameras, cinema cameras that are designed for that purpose. And that's kind of the whole point to my RED overview here. The other videos I've done and the one I'm doing right now is that camera is a cinema camera and designed for that purpose. Meaning, on YouTube, you'll hear about guys using the Komodo to do YouTube videos, and that's fine, but that's not what they're designed for. They have autofocus now, or the Komodo does, but it's not autofocus like you'd want to use on YouTube. Maybe it will get there one day, but the point is they are cinema cameras designed for certain applications, especially movies, music videos, and commercials. I'm a big proponent of shoot your movie on whatever you want to shoot it on, but if you're going to spend the money and go that extra mile, so to speak, using a cinema camera, then that is a big benefit to cinema cameras is they are designed for cinema. They're designed really for manual focus, which is a lot of fun, to be honest. I've gotten in a bad habit, and I say bad, but a bad habit of using autofocus. I learned manual focus when I first came up. I've been doing this for 20 years. And so all the cameras I shot with before like the DSLR revolution, and even the early DSLRs didn't have good autofocus. That didn't come until what, the last 5 or 6 years, really. Going back to cine lenses and manual focus has been a lot of fun. And again, that's what those cameras are designed for. And ultimately, right out of the camera, they just look like a movie. So that's all the good. And again, it's mostly good. And anything that's bad, I'm about to say, really is more operator error and a little bit of design, to be honest, but mainly operator error. So the number one thing that I had issues with is the touchscreen on top of the Komodo. While I love having that there, it is super handy. And I actually used it a lot for pulling focus because the peaking on that monitor is super accurate and it's right there at your fingertips. But speaking of fingertips, one thing I found myself doing accidentally was touching the screen and accidentally rolling the camera, inadvertently rolling the camera, which is not a big deal. A false roll is fine. What's a bigger deal though, and this happened multiple times, 3 very important times I didn't realize until later, is I accidentally cut the camera. So if you don't know, the Komodo has a touch screen and you have a record button on top. And so your finger, sort of like with your phone, your iPhone, you can inadvertently do a pocket dial or hit an app and open an app. Well, the Komodo works very similar. And so occasionally I accidentally rolled, or again, worse, I accidentally cut when I thought I was rolling. I did do multiple takes, and so I was covered, but you got to be really careful with that touch screen. Now, you can lock the screen by holding down the 2 arrow buttons, and I probably should have done it, and I might do it more now, but I liked having access to the screen, and so holding down the 2 buttons, while it doesn't seem like a big deal, and in hindsight, I should have done it, it was an extra step that I didn't want to do. Because on the side of the camera, there is a hardware-based button that you push, or you can use a handle. There's red handles that have buttons on them. And I have a Portkeys monitor that I can actually use that will roll the camera as well. And understand that when you're rolling, you get this red ring around the outside of the monitor showing you that you're recording. However, if you've ever shot anything, especially under pressure, you'll miss things. And so while I could have noticed, I probably should have noticed that when I hit the button that I wasn't rolling anymore. When you're following focus or you're listening to a performance, etc., I was the director and DP. And we had an external monitor that people were watching, but not all the time. And on top of that, that stuff gets missed as well. And along those same lines with the touchscreen, I did what I call double clutch. Again, didn't realize I did it. And I've done this with record buttons too. I think everyone has at one point. Let's say you're doing an interview and you go to roll and you accidentally roll first. You think you're not rolling, and then you say action and you hit the button and you actually cut. And so you get that first 15, 20 seconds of the pre-interview, and then you don't get the interview. Well, I had it happen on the movie as well, but it's because of the touchscreen. I hit the button, but then your hand hits it double. And so you roll and then you cut like almost simultaneously. And so you get like a 2-second or maybe a 1-second clip that you don't notice until later. So basically what I'm suggesting is, while the touchscreen is great, I would use the hardware button on the side of the camera or a button on a handle just to confirm you're rolling. Or if you do use the touchscreen, just double, triple check that you're rolling, and then keep your hands clear of the screen so you don't accidentally cut or roll again. And then 2 more things unrelated to the touchscreen, but one of them is related to monitoring. So I shot the movie 240-1. So it's a DCI scope, basically. So it's a widescreen look. Now, the actual shooting, though, I shot in, I guess it's 17:9 aspect ratio, which is the native 6K RED. And so I get more on the top and bottom, which is what I wanted, because that way in post, I can shift the image up and down. Well, to make sure I was framing things properly, I put up a marker. So there was a 2.4-1 marker on the screen, and I chose yellow so I could really see it. What I should have done is actually blocked off the top and bottom of the screen. I don't think you can do that in the Komodo. If I'm wrong, then let me know in the comments. But here's my point. Again, quickly looking at the monitor or quickly looking at the Komodo screen, sometimes I thought I was wider than I really was. And so later in post, when I'm reframing everything to 240, the headroom's a little tighter than I want. So the shots aren't as wide in some situations that my brain thought they were, because they look wider when I'm shooting on the monitor. So again, you're seeing the whole screen. You just have a line there as the frame reference instead of black bars on top and bottom, which is what I would recommend doing and what I would do in the future. Again, it's a psychological thing. I thought I was shooting wider than I was. And so a couple times that's kind of burned me a little bit. And you can shoot 240-1 in the Komodo. It's a setting. However, again, I wanted to have that area, that top and bottom, to be able to move the image, reframe and post, which I'm doing a lot. I shot in 6K, I'm editing at 4K, so I can already push in. But long story short, the monitoring was a little bit tricky. And so I would recommend, if you're doing that, to just really pay attention. And the last thing I want to bring up is timecode. And so we were using a timecode slate, and we had a tentacle that was generating, or maybe it was I can't remember the brand. I think it was a tentacle that was generating timecode coming from the audio gear, from the audio equipment into the RED Komodo, and there's an input. And so we connected the audio cable, and within the RED menu, you choose how you want to read timecode. And I chose external, and the RED appeared to have timecode. Well, when we got in post, the timecode wasn't there. It's on the audio files and it's on the slate, but it evidently, and I'm sure it was just a setting I did wrong, it didn't get onto the actual files, which is not a big deal because the main reason you need timecode is for syncing audio. And so I'm just syncing via the audio waveforms versus timecode. Although timecode would make it a lot easier, it's still great to have the timecode on the audio files because I can quickly reference them with the slate. But for whatever reason, it didn't work into the Komodo. It recorded edge code, which is basically just whatever the camera is set up to whenever you input the new card or put in the new card. Again, operator error. Somehow I didn't get the timecode onto the files, which is something I need to do more research on for the next project I shoot. But again, just something to be aware of when using the RED Komodo. Overall, though, a very good experience. I love that camera. It's amazing that that thing is only $6,000. I'm telling you, when you see this movie, it does not look like it's shot on a $6,000 camera. I paired it with Mikey lenses, which I'll do another video about, and I used a black satin filter, but that in combination with the Komodo, it really looks very good. I mean, I'm really impressed with what the camera output, again, for a very affordable setup. Now, I know to some people that's a lot of money, but in the scheme of things, when you're talking about, an Alexa Mini that's like 40 grand bare bones, and you trick it out, you're talking, up to $100,000. The Komodo is an amazing bang for the buck. The Komodo X now is even better, supposedly. I haven't played with it yet. I actually still think the Komodo, if you're an indie filmmaker, is the better bet because it's 6 grand versus the Komodo X is 10 grand. The point is the Komodo is an amazing deal. And so if you're planning to make any kind of indie film or, again, shoot music videos, commercials, whatever, I would absolutely recommend checking one out. Everything I mentioned in this video, I'll have links in the description, including about the movie. Again, the movie is called Casey's Favorite Song. It's a period piece set in 1981. It's kind of a John Hughes meets Richard Linklater vibe movie. I would say Ferris Bueller meets Dazed and Confused, and with a little bit of high fidelity thrown in. It's about a kid trying to record a mixtape in the early 1980s. And so it's a fun movie. We're in post-production right now. I hope to have it released later this year. Not released, but released to be able to go out to film festivals. It'll most likely be available to be seen in 2024. You can follow me on Twitter, and we have a Facebook page for the movie, and then I have my other YouTube channel. And so lots of ways to keep in touch with me and follow the progress of the movie. So thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and I will talk to you guys in the next video.